So Romanian culture, there's two things you need to know right off the bat. First is communism fell like 20 years ago, but you're still going to notice it. Everything's built out of concrete, everything. So that common image that you get of like communist Russia, like massive apartment complexes built out of concrete. Yeah, you live in those. That's where you do your tracting, and they're not that bad. So like they don't have that bad of a rep that they kind of people talk about. The second thing you need to know is the Orthodox Church. It's like paramount in their culture. I know in other countries you hear about like the Catholic Church being super predominant and like controlling a lot of things. I would kind of sounds like arrogant, but I would say the Orthodox Church has a much stronger grip on the culture and the people in Romania. They hold really strong to their tradition. They believe that Andrew came and brought them the gospel, and that they've had the church since. So they got their roots, like from one of the 12. So they stick to it. But because of that, a lot of their culture reflects around both these things. So you kind of have the conflicting ideals of when communism said no to religion, and then when it was released, people got their religion back, and so they stick to it a lot stronger. They don't want people taking it away. And so I'd say probably 99% of people you run into are going to be Orthodox. And they'll say, the classic line you hear, I was born Orthodox, my family's Orthodox, and I'll die Orthodox. But it's a good faith, and they actually keep it for a fairly good portion of the population. So as far as culture goes, there's a kind of rift in generations. The older generation, you'll see a lot of the thought process rotates around the communism, but and the younger generation is more like free and kind of ecstatic and more. We use a word called schmecker, and it means kind of like a smart aleck, but it's because there's these like conflicting. There's like a rift between their history and these generations right now. Other facts about culture is Romanians care a lot about their family. I didn't think that. I always thought the family was kind of a strong focus in the U.S. And then when I went to Romania, like family is number one to them. In the United States, you grow old, you get older, you become an adult, you leave home, you go make a family, or you establish a family, and you move away from your parents, kind of. In Romania, you stick close to your family. A lot of times, like even after you're married, you'll stay with your parents, or they'll move in with you, and you don't separate. They stay pretty close together in family. They really value that. If you're worried about like walking on the streets and doing missionary work, or even just being like a tourist or something, Romania has very low levels of violence. I was never threatened while doing my missionary work. While I was there, I heard of 2 stories, and they were almost provoked. And so, like, if you're just smart about, like, don't be out too late after dark, or don't go in sketchy areas, there's, like, really nothing you need to worry about. Oh, do's or don'ts. Yeah, there's just one thing. Use a lot of public transportation. People are always out. As Americans in public, we're really boisterous and loud. And so you'll hop on to like a metro or a subway, and if you're with a couple other missionaries, you'll be talking, and everybody will be quiet and just look at you, because like it's just I think if you're from the east part of this country, like you'll understand a little bit better because it's a little bit more like that. But we're so used to just being free and like in social perspective, like you speak all the time, and so kind of a don't is just don't be kind of like a public nuisance. I know that sounds interesting because you're supposed to be a missionary, like, and follow the rules and be a representative of Jesus Christ, but a lot of times, like, being having too much laughter or being too loud in public, it's they kind of look down on that a little bit. So, like, be yourself, enjoy that, and be happy, but also be kind of conscious of, like, when you're being kind of, like, noisy. If you notice everybody's staring at you on the tramway, there's probably a reason for that. So maybe you could tone it down or not laugh so incredibly loud or something.
A lot of their culture is in the Orthodox religion, which somehow survived through communism. I think it was kind of like the communist leaders kind of overlooked orthodoxy still existing. And you see a lot of different things of that just bred into their culture. They have things like the 40-day fast where they'd not eat meat for 40 days, basically a vegan diet for 40 days. And all sorts of, like, every holiday has something great. They have so many holidays there. There's a saint's day for basically every saint you could name under the sun. It's kind of fun also. When you go by a church, they'll always cross themselves. And not a lot of people know why they do it, but someone was saying it's kind of like a memory of praying to God in a sense. Like, I don't have time to stop and worship right now, but I want to at least let you know that you're in my thoughts. That's kind of how I perceived that. Seeing that actually kind of strengthened my my want to pray more, pray stronger and more fervently. Because if they can do it every time they see a church, I might as well do it all the time, Because there are a lot of churches there. With food, I think the only thing that I can think of in etiquette is when someone gives you something to eat, you eat it all. Because I don't know, like I've always been one to eat, so I haven't ever left anything left over. But they will keep giving you more. It's like, oh, we've got more. Take some more sodomali or whatever it may be. And the food is like 99% of the time really, really good. And so I think the only thing is make sure to eat their food. Try it at least before you say that you don't like it. Because I had an opportunity to try something that didn't look too great. And probably wasn't my favorite thing to eat, but I was definitely glad that I'd tried it afterwards. So for holidays, actually, I can think of their two largest ones are Christmas and Easter, as the Christian religion would denote. For Christmas, they spend so much time together as a family. It's really awesome. And Easter time, the night before, they have what American missionaries called midnight mass. I don't know exactly what they'd call it, but the night before Easter, everyone gathers around the churches, and they have a mass or a service together in which they light this candle, which is, I believe the tradition is that it's fire from heaven coming down on Easter. And so the priest or the head of the church would light a candle and then pass it to everyone, and everyone would pass their candle out. And if you made it home with your candle still lit, all of your sins would be forgiven, is how tradition denotes. But they have all these different little traditions that they'll stick with that in some ways do point them a lot towards God, which is something interesting to think about. Because traditions are great as long as they point us towards God.
I remember reading an article about Eastern Europeans. It was written by a history professor who had grown up in one of the Eastern European countries under Soviet rule. And it was intended to describe Russians, but also Moldovans, and including Ukrainians, Serbians, and Romanians. And the essence of the article was, Eastern Europeans are people of extremes. They are not just sad and happy. They are delighted and furious. And when they get sad, they don't just get sad, they get depressed. And that was overall the experience I had. There exists a great attitude of tradition and things being correct in Romania. And that's the way they keep their homes, and that's the way they view the way someone should live their life. But at the same time, they take great pride in revolution, especially the the revolution of 1989, shortly after the Berlin Wall fell. Now, that means that while Romanians have a very seemingly cold exterior shell when you first meet them, they have this warmth to them once you crack that shell that's almost overwhelming. Once you befriend a Romanian, they are deeply loyal and deeply friendly, and they'll do anything for you. And this was refreshing, because in America there are many people who are very, very kind, very friendly on the exterior, but don't invest their heart into the relationship and into caring for you. So on the exterior, it's very kind and very friendly, but it's only about this deep. But just as Romanians go with extremes, they'll go from an extremely professional relationship to a very deep friendship. And it makes you feel very loved when you make those friendships.